He brought to the band a huge amount of musical ability and technical ability, and could hold his own as a soloist on stage by himself.
I actually personally love what Gary Moore brought to Thin Lizzy. It was a kind of gut-wrenching blues sort of vibe, but in the idiom of a rock guitar player. I think his guitar playing was quite abrasive. So on Black Rose, it's kind of pushed Lynnett's voice into places that with the previous lineup he wouldn't have ever gone. I think Gary Moore maybe took this sort of more sensitive side of Phil Lynott and kept it intact, but drove him to more kind of telling it like it is, more kind of bluesy, more blues based, and I think it was had a good result.
When you came in my life, you changed my world, my Sarah.
Sarah, for instance, was a completely different side of the coin, because Phil was now a father and Sarah was a little song to his daughter, so that was quite sweet. Perhaps not giving Brian the run that he'd had on S&M, but then we had the Celtic Symphony ending the track listing, and that was a chance for everyone to cut loose, and certainly Gary Moore was very much in there too.
While Gary Moore brought out things from Lynott no one else could, musicians-wise, Phil Lynott brought out things from Gary Moore nobody else could either. It was a wonderful complementation of talents.
Here's Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy on their Chinatown tour of Australia.
Okay, pal, we're here. That's $4, mate.
Thanks very much. I thought we were going to have a talk.
Hey?
Thought we were going to have a talk.
We are having a talk, actually. I'm being silly. Hope you enjoyed the ride.
Yeah, it was good.
Listen, congratulations on the
Tokyo.
yeah, exactly. On the Chinatown album.
Cheers.
It's I've only just got it and I played it all last night, and you must be very happy with it.
Yeah, I'm really pleased, and it's doing well in.
You'll tell us about how it's going in England. It's already got a silver record, right?
Yeah, it's gone silver. It's not released yet.
Right.
But it's gone silver.
And the single?
Top 10. So.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Now listen,
so we get to Chinatown, the 1980 album, and I think the band has come to a musical crossroads. It was the 10th or 11th album by now. They'd had the big success that they'd looked for, but they weren't superstars or anything. And once again, Mr. Robertson had departed the band for one reason or another, and they brought in Snowy White, a great guitar player, classy guitar player.
The Gary Moore drama, and there's been a lot said, so we won't go into it all. That must have really thrown the band, though.
Yeah. Well, here we are a year later, back in the charts,
right.
Back in Australia.
Yeah, but I mean...
and the future looks really bright for us.
And how did you run into Snowy? I mean, to get a...
I seen him play in Madison Square Garden. Were we Rambo for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, I seen him play in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And I liked his playing then.
This is going to sound disrespectful, but Snowy White's the biggest disaster ever to happen to Thin Lizzy. No nastiness meant to Snowy White, a very good guitarist in his own right, worked quite well with Pink Floyd as a second guitarist, but being brought into the band as the lead guitarist never worked at all.
Now, Snowy and Scott Gorham were a little bit too similar. I mean, they actually even looked similar. But there wasn't the same kind of clash of cultures and personalities that had been so productive before. And although Snowy's a great guitarist, and I think he's underrated, not the right man for the job.
Lynott suddenly had no one in the band to work with. He desperately needed somebody there who would challenge him. And he had Brian Robertson and Gary Moore before. He didn't have anyone now. And Snowy White's tenure in Lizzy was hugely disappointing and really saw the band slide downhill fast.
I mean, Pink Floyd and Thin Lizzy don't exactly come over here.
Yeah.
Gel together, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the thing was, I mean, Pink Floyd, Snowy's been doing the gig with Pink Floyd for a couple of years. And it's like just a gig once every 2 years. As you know, Pink Floyd only play every 2 years. And he just wanted to be in something that was a little more raunchy.
Right.
And where he was his own man. And he was looking to join a band, whereas with Pink Floyd he was just doing as he was told, sort of thing, you know, another brick in the wall.
Snowy, as I say, is and was a good guitarist. I think he found Lizzy's way of working a little bit difficult. He'd turn up at the studio and nobody else would be there for the next 4 or 5 hours. By the time they'd arrived, he'd gone off the boil. So it was a bit of a clash of cultures, like Eric Bell had been back in 72, 73.
I think in retrospect, the band probably looked at him and thought maybe he wasn't a good choice as far as going out and getting drunk and taking drugs and so on, but he's a fantastic player. He plays all over the album, but to me it's not typical Snowy White playing, and I don't think that Thin Lizzy really was probably the right band for him.
Yes, they're living and dying down in old Chinatown.
Chinatown was a disappointing album. It didn't have the strength of songwriting. It didn't have the depth that had gone before. Killer on the Loose was an excellent song, and the title track itself was quite decent. The rest of the album was skating. It didn't seem to really pull together. Part of the problem, I think, is that Lynnett's indulgences were overtaking everything else.
The writing, even though he'd come up with Kill on the Loose, which is a great track, and the band contributed heavily to that track, the rest of the songwriting is wispy, it's bitty, it's slightly disjointed. On some tracks on this album, you can hear that they were regurgitating riffs and bits of melodies that they knew would work.
And I think it was around this time that Phil Lynott did his first solo album, didn't he? And I think he clearly kept the better material for his first solo album. I really think he kept a lot of the songs back for his solo work.
People had overdosed on guitar solos by 1980, and well, it was the beginning of the 80s, so there was, I think that the sort of long-haired guitar rocker sort of idiom was starting to reach maybe the end of its sort of shelf life. There were so many bands with that exact formula that people were tiring of it. And it even made a classic band, a classy band like Thin Lizzy, look a bit sort of tired.
It didn't hang. It just never really kicked. And unfortunately, it became a dud. And it heralded an era that was disappointing for Lizzy.
There is no relief, there is no beliefs, not in Chinatown.
The lights of which this planet has never seen. Now I ask you, do you believe this to be true? I was standing at the bedside. It was on the night that my father died. He was crying out in pain. To his God he said, have mercy. His body was riddled with a disease. Unknown to man, he expected no cure. But before he died in the night, he was lost in pain. Down, down, deep underground. The great disaster.
I really think the band had started to lose the plot a little bit. You know, heavy touring schedule. There was allegedly infighting to do with a lot of money. There were certainly huge amounts of drugs being used, in particular Phil Lynott. So, you know, his writing ability was being impaired.